Welcome to Razzball Radio, Monday, October 20th. I'm your host, Nick Capozzi, and it's Monday, so, we're joined by the guy who is all things Razzball football, Jay Longfellow, a.k.a. JayWrong. Jay, long time no see, brother. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I mean, despite the Chargers' loss, I've put my delicate heart back together. So I'm ready to go. Yeah.
Hey, man, we got a lot to talk to today because we got to recap all the games, so let's get right to it. Kicking off with Indianapolis 27, Cincinnati 0. I was looking for some key takeaways from a fantasy perspective from this game, but I'm kind of stuck on the fact that Cincy has looked terrible for 3 weeks in a row, or at least 2.5 weeks, let's say the last three. But I think the key takeaways here is from Indianapolis' point of view, Trent Richardson was actually having a real good game, but tweaked his hamstrings. We'll monitor that, give you more information throughout the week. But Gio Bernard, 7 for 17 for the Bungles. I hate saying that because 3 weeks ago I said this team could contend for the title, and now I'm calling them the Bungles again. You worried about Gio?
I'm not. It looked like an overall bad performance. It's almost as if Marvin Lewis went to the team and said, you know what, play like this is your playoffs. It seems like that's what happened with the Bengals. It's like they're in the first game of the playoffs mode right now, and they're stuck in it ever since that Patriots game. And you're right. It was only 3 weeks ago that we're talking about them as a potential playoff team, maybe the best in the AFC, maybe the best team overall. And it's hard to say that with an Andy Dalton-led team. He's not the worst, but he's certainly not the best. But as far as it goes with Sanu, Bernard, Hill, I'm not worried. They'll get theirs. I think this is just something that teams go through. But it keeps us in check for going crazy about these guys, which I think is a good thing overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also it speaks about the parity of the league. Rumor is AJ Green might be back next week, so something to monitor. I think Sanu is still going to be really valuable and rosterable rest of the season, but do keep an eye on that. All right, let's talk about a game that was a bit more interesting. Miami 27, Chicago 14. I actually had Miami this week in Vegas. Brandon Marshall calls out Jay Cutler. Cutler didn't have a very good game. Marshall goes 6 for 48, and Alshon Jeffrey 2 for 9. What's going on with this offense, buddy?
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, for Cutler, what can you say? Cutler's going to Cutler. He's always been, a guy who can mix and match his interceptions and touchdowns seamlessly. It just happens with him. Matt Forte was obviously great. And about Brandon Marshall, he was calling out Robbie Gould, who I have no idea why. When you call a field goal kicker losing by more than a field goal, something's kind of amiss there. But, he's facing his old team, so obviously he wanted to compete a little bit more. There are outlier games. I'd like to think this is one. I can't see the Bears offense doing something like this again, but it does show you kind of what anything can happen on Sunday. That cliche does hold true, even though cliches are generally kind of blah when you use them. But yeah, this one was pretty bad.
You're right. Interesting from a Miami point of view. We don't often talk about them as a great fantasy team or a great team for fantasy, but Lamar Miller has been Mr. Consistent. His point totals the last 4 weeks, 14, 17, 14 and a half, 15. Holy cow. And Ryan Tannehill, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, also ran 6 for 48. Would you start Tannehill if you had to?
It's still wait and see. Obviously, it depends on format. 2 quarterback leagues, he's an okay QB2. In 12-team, 10-team, he's matchup bye week fill-in at this point. There's just too many options right now that can do something better than he can. So.
All right, here's another team that could be a contender. I wasn't crazy about them going into the season, but Baltimore 29, Atlanta 7. Nice appearance by Roddy White, thank goodness. 9 for 100 and a touchdown. Julio was okay. Doesn't feel like it, but Julio Jones actually the 3rd highest scoring wide receiver this year. Does that surprise you?
It just seems that they disappear at times, and it's always road games. I know you constantly bring this up, that they're really a dome-oriented team, maybe even more so than the Saints. And, back to the Ravens really quick. I'm really surprised, too. I did not think they were this good. I didn't like their defense going into the season. I didn't like their offense at all, but they've appeared to become one of the better teams of the AFC. It's interesting. I can't say it's because of Flacco. I like to give mostly some credit to Justin Forsett. he is playing out of his mind. I think he leads the league in a lot of rushing categories, which is a joke in itself. I don't even have to parody that. Torrey Smith finally showed up. That was good. For all the Torrey Smith owners out there, waiting for 2 months on him was a good and patient strategy, I guess. And the thing about Atlanta is they're a mess. They have no running game. Matt Ryan is there only, like we said, at home. But Julio Jones, yeah, I'm not worried about it. he has that top 5 potential. He'll hold that. So
Yeah, absolutely. He's the only thing right now that's good coming out of that offense. From a Baltimore point of view, you right about Torrey Smith, still not doing a lot, but did get a touchdown on 3 catches yesterday. But Justin Forsett hasn't had less than 8 fantasy points in a game. Might be the waiver wire pickup of the year thus far. But let's talk about Jacksonville beats up Cleveland 24-6. Only thing I want to talk about here, Denard Robinson, 22 for 127 and a touchdown. I don't think he can keep it up. You with me or against me?
I mean, it's hard for me to believe into anything of the offense from the Jaguars. I mean, especially you have the Browns. They do this. They did this last year too, where you believe at them at a 3-2 record. You're like, oh,
I know.
maybe the factory of sadness will start producing some happiness. Maybe that's on the line there. But no, they go and lose to a hapless Jaguars team. And the running situation, I think a lot of people were picking up Storm Johnson. I was lukewarm on him. I mean, he was undrafted. His ceiling may not be that high, but if any volume running back deserves to get credit, but it turns out to be Denard Robinson, so he deserves to get looked at. I'm not sure what his ceiling is, but that's only because it's the Jaguars.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't think he has the body to get that kind of touches. So we'll see what happens. I could be wrong. Let's talk now. Detroit 24, New Orleans 23. Jimmy Graham plays 30 snaps but has 0 catches and only 2 targets. I made the mistake of starting him in a couple leagues. I thought he might get a red zone opportunity. Big day for Golden Tate, 10 for 154 and a touchdown. Matthew Stafford, only 92 points this year, 12th ranked QB, believe it or not. Reggie Bush at 32 yards. He was hobbling on that ankle. And Mark Ingram in his first game back went 10 for 16. I didn't expect much, but I was hoping for a bit more. Here's the question, though. We got about 30 seconds, Jay. Golden Tate, when CJ comes back, when Calvin's back, hopefully in a week or two, is he still going to be useful?
Oh yeah, I mean he'll obviously be useful. I don't see many 100-yard games after that. I think it's just pretty apparent that without Kevin Johnson, Matthew Stafford sucks and Golden Tate does not. So I mean those are the quick 30-second takeaway there.
All right, fair enough. One thing, this is really important. If you play in a league that locks your rosters, keep in mind Detroit is heading over to London this week, and it's a 9:30 a.m. Eastern game. So we'll probably mention that a couple times this week, but do keep that in mind. That is a 9:30 Eastern start in London this week. All right, we'll be back. Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network, with more right after this. Welcome back, Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'm Nick Capozzi. You can follow me on Twitter at NICKCAPOZZI. He is Jay Longfellow, head football editor of Razzball.com, and you can follow him at JayWrong. Now, Jay, people can argue that you're wrong, but I'll tell you, one of your calls this year, holy cow, because we're going to talk about the Green Bay 38, Carolina 17 game. Greg the Monster Olsen, 14 points. He's got 83.5 points this year, only 7.5 behind Julius Thomas, which is crazy. You had Olsen as the number 2 tight end. He has produced, holy cow. Can he maintain this pace? I mean, obviously you thought so if you had him as the number 2 tight end.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes up for my Ryan Matthews call, so we'll call that a push. So, it wasn't hard to see that he was going to be fantasy relevant. Of course, he is. With a new wide receiver core, with Carolina's struggles at the quarterback position. Not, I wouldn't say struggles, but it's been kind of rocky back there. Cam Newton is still healing, it would seem, but there were signs that he could be a top 5 tight end. So a bold prediction is, well, why not pump it up a few notches? He's obviously done well. He's only off my projections. He only needs like 504 touchdowns to go, so he'll meet that. I feel great about it. I hope people listened and are taking advantage of it.
All right, lots of news out of the Buffalo 17, Minnesota 16 game, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. But C.J. Spiller breaks his collarbone, done for the season. Might be the biggest disappointment in fantasy this year. Fred Jackson pulls his groin out 2 to 3 weeks. The buzzy name today is Bryce Brown. But Anthony Dixon, who never got an opportunity with San Francisco, was actually saying to a local beat reporter in Buffalo, he thinks he's starting next week. Would you spend your money on Bryce Brown? Dixon did go 13 for 51 in the running game.
Yeah, I think Dixon is the guy. He did a good job filling in. I mean, honestly, Bryce Brown has always been a name to pay attention to in the deeper leagues, maybe especially when he was with Philadelphia. And I think we talked about him in the preseason too. Is he fantasy relevant? Well, it would take an injury to Spiller and Jackson for him to do so. That's what we decided. And even then, I think Dixon still is the guy here. I mean, maybe they should use E.G. Manuel running back. Maybe they need.
Hey, he's big enough to play tight end.
Yeah,
I'll
I
tell you
think
though
Jason
about
is a
Bryce
guy.
Brown. I'm not going to spend my money on him this week. The reason is that yeah, he is explosive. He showed it when he was with Philadelphia, but can't hold on to the ball. Buffalo trades a fourth round pick for him, and this guy's been inactive all season. Now, I guess they figured they're holding on to him for next year. I'm not sure what the logic is there, but they're down a couple picks already between that Bryce Brown deal and the move up to get Sammy Watkins. Now, the Sammy Watkins trade looked great this week. 9 for 122, 2 touchdowns, wins the game, couple seconds left. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, but man, this guy is talented. Is he gonna be more consistent this year? Is there the opportunity that he could be a more consistent contributor?
Oh yeah, of course. With rookie wide receivers, I know I've said this before, but they have probably the largest learning curve next to quarterbacks when it comes to learning the NFL systems, and it's only going to get better from here. I mean, he has the talent. He has unbelievable talent, obviously, and I don't think he'll get worse. He'll definitely the curvature is going up.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. So, look, he's still gonna. I'd start. He's gonna be kind of a Vincent Jackson. He's gonna be boom or bust some weeks, but when he is on, man, is he good. And just from a Minnesota perspective, Jerick McKinnon goes 19 for 103, still leading the charge there as the top running back. I told you a couple weeks ago, spend on him. Okay, Washington beats Tennessee 19-17. I was looking for some takeaways out of this game. This was a tough game to get some takeaways from. Here's the only one I'm going to give you. Kirk Cousins gets concussed. RG3 might be back next week. What do you think about RG3 the rest of the season, assume he comes back? Give him a week or two, obviously, to kind of shake the rust
Yeah.
off. Then they get their bye week. But look, RG3 is available on a ton of wires right now.
Yeah, I would pick him up if you're having trouble at quarterback. If you take the wait and see approach and he has a good game, well then he's gone. So, it's tough because where's the line to use him and where's the line not to use him? Like, would you use him over Tom Brady? Probably not. Would you use him over an Andy Dalton? Yeah, I might do that. And so it becomes
Stop with the
difficult
ginger
again.
hate, Jay. Stop with the ginger
Uh,
hate.
he's the first one that comes to mind. See, Andy Dalton, the thing is, really quick,
He's a
I
whipping
see him
boy.
as not a whipping boy, but he's kind of like the litmus test for all other quarterbacks. If your quarterback is better than Andy Dalton, you're in pretty good shape. But if it's worse than Andy Dalton, well, you might need some help at the quarterback position. That's kind of where I see him.
Okay.
So it's not hate, it's just mediocrity.
Okay. All right. Let's take a couple minutes. I want to drill down on St. Louis 28, Seattle 26. I'll tell you why. On Mondays, I rewatch every single game. And I wanted to watch this one specifically because I talked about Bryce Brown. I wouldn't spend on him. I was thinking about spending my money on Trey Mason, who went 18 for 85 and a touchdown. Tell you why I won't, though. He had a couple of nice runs when the offensive line created a gaping hole. Other than that, he wasn't as dynamic as I was kind of hoping he would be. Um, I'm not going to spend him. We'll come back to him in a second. Brian Quick, 5.5 points last 2 weeks. Might be a buy low candidate. He's still a number one receiver there. Austin Davis has been a great little quarterback. But Russell Wilson, 34 points. Excuse me. Yeah, 34 points. Led the league yesterday in scoring. And it didn't seem like it. And that Seattle team, if you have a chance, watch this game. Because Seattle had so many penalties. They were playing, and it wasn't defensive backs getting past interference calls. It was false starts. It was encroachments. It was face masks. That team just looks out of sync. And Marshawn Lynch had two nice runs, both called back on penalties, including one for a touchdown. Talk to me about Trey Mason, though. I'm sorry, I kind of went on there for a second, but talk to me about Trey Mason. Would you spend on him this week?
I have to admit, last week is when I told everyone on Razzball to buy. I told them even if you want to drop Zach Stacy and add Trey Mason. Now this is different. In the preseason, I was low on Trey Mason because the hype machine was going, and I said the two concerns were ball control and pass protection. Now obviously the ball control issues showed up a little bit, but at this point, I think everyone is tired of watching Zach Stacy run up the middle for 2 yards. I mean, I think Trey Mason is the guy, and really St. Louis they're playing for next season. I mean, this is a lost season. Nothing's going to happen to that coaching staff because they have the Sam Bradford.
I don't think it's a lost season,
thing.
actually.
I think it might be. I mean, that's a tough division. You already have Arizona ahead. You have San Francisco.
Yeah. Okay.
Somewhat reliable. And Seattle, I think their demise is somewhat overrated, but it's kind of fun to watch just how they're doing it. But I do love Trey Mason at this point in the season. I think he was your ad last week. I think people are obviously going to add him this week. I like what I see. And remember, it's not like the Seattle defense, sure, it's struggling, but it still is a fearsome front seven. So when you add that to the mix, I think he's a good upside play.
All right, we'll be back after this. We got more to talk about. I'm Nick Capozzi. He's Jay Longfellow. This is Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome back, Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. JayWrong, Nick Capozzi. We are talking fantasy football because that's what we do here. That's what we do. All right, Kansas City, death, taxes, and Andy Reid after a bye week. KC goes into San Diego. I didn't think they stood a chance. 23-20 over the Chargers. A couple takeaways for me. One, Jamal Charles looked good, 22 for 95 and a touchdown. Brandon Oliver was not bad, 17 touches, 78 yards. But Keenan Allen goes 6 for 58, but on 10 targets. Now, you, sir, are skewed by the Chargers, so I'm taking whatever you say here with a grain of salt. But Keenan Allen right now looks like he might be the buy low candidate at wide receiver for me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I am buying Keenan Allen low everywhere at this
Grain of
point
salt.
because, yeah, it's just he's had an underreported quad injury. Like, no one's heard about it for some reason.
Hold on. You disappeared. Your handsome face is gone. There you are. Okay, you're back.
It was too much for the camera.
Yeah, so. You broke the camera with those good looks.
Yeah, with Keenan Allen, I'm buying him low everywhere, just for the reason that the quad injury he's been suffering for the last 3 or 4 weeks has started to heal, and no one's really heard about it. It hasn't been reported much at all. He still leads the Chargers in targets, and so that's a good sign. I think it's only upside from here on out. I mean, obviously yesterday he looked a little bit more mobile. He was targeted a bit more and was a bigger part of the offense. So I think he'll return to form. It's taken a while.
No targets for Green in that game. Which doesn't surprise me, but kind of disappointing. He was an interesting guy looking at coming into the season. All right, speaking of interesting, Arizona, who's had a mishmash of quarterbacks right now, still winning, beats Oakland. Now it's Oakland, but still, 24-13. Key takeaway for me, Andre Ellington, a monster again, 30 touches for 160 yards. 30 touches, sorry. But where's the touchdowns, Andre? Well, Stephon Taylor got them yesterday. He goes 12 for 40 on the ground, ran one in, and 2 catches for 19 yards, also caught one. Is he a sneaky, maybe a vulture kind of rest of season here?
Yeah, in terms of Taylor, it looks like it. I mean, Ellington did leave the game for a little bit with a rib injury he was nursing in the second quarter when Taylor got some of the time. But yeah, Bruce Arians stresses a balanced approach. I mean, obviously this balanced approach doesn't include Larry Fitzgerald for some reason, but I think Taylor needs will get some of that time. Whether that makes him fantasy relevant, it's tough to say. I mean, you could argue that Carlos Hyde can vulture some things, but he hasn't been fantasy relevant yet. So,
all right, real interesting game. Dallas 31, New York Giants 21. I believe, and I didn't have time to go back and check the tape, but I believe when we were doing the tour this year in Dallas, I gave you my sugar daddy, which is the player that I thought was going to grossly outperform his average draft position. And I believe for the Cowboys, it was actually Gavin Escobar, who goes 3 for 65 and 2 touchdowns. Now, don't expect that. He's probably not going to average 3 catches the rest of the season. But you're watching the future there at tight end. Man, that guy is long and athletic, and he can catch the ball. Someone to keep an eye on, especially in deeper leagues. DeMarco Murray, 28 for 128. Another 100-yard rushing game. That's 7 in a row. New NFL record. Des Bryant, 9 for 51. Looked like he may have had a touchdown, but he got called back. He didn't quite make it into the end zone. And Tony Romo, another good game. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. Just give the ball to DeMarco. I've been saying for a couple weeks here, you need to get Joe Randall. Petty theft aside, you got to pick up Joseph Randall because he's always hurt. DeMarco is always hurt. I've been saying for weeks. And look, I got DeMarco on a bunch of teams. I don't want him to get hurt. I'm just saying I could see that situation. Man, there's a lot in this game. Also, from the Giants side, who's going to catch the ball, right? With Victor Cruz going down, Beckham goes 4 for 34, 2 touchdowns. Randall, 6 for 74. Larry Donnell, who had 2 bad weeks in a row, back in the picture, 7 for 90. You talk about what you want in this game, man. This was an interesting game for me from a fantasy perspective. So you pick what you want.
Yeah, it is an interesting game. I mean, we have to start talking about the Cowboys being a really good team, which is, I find that fascinating. It's really a change of pace for me.
It makes me throw up a little bit in my mouth.
It does, and you're right about Murray here because it seems like their offensive strategy. I'm going to call it the death to DeMarco March. I think that's what they're doing here. They're basically just using him up. I'd rather go with Dunbar as a handcuff than Randall, but I think both will be fantasy relevant if Murray goes down. Des Bryant, I mean, I'm actually going to be dressing up as Des Bryant for Halloween because he's such a monster. I mean, honestly. But
you
yeah,
need some elevator shoes, brother.
Right. Escobar, yeah, he's a red zone threat, and that's. I mean, I don't want to say that's all he is at this point, but that's how they've been using him, which has value in deeper leagues, of course. But he's not quite, mainstream format ready yet. But I could see it. He's definitely the future there. There's no doubt about it. And it seems to me that the main weapon for Manning would be Odell Beckham Jr. He's done a great job. All I'm worried about is can he do the salsa?
Yeah, although he had a pretty good end zone dance on one of his touchdowns. Okay, Denver 42, San Francisco 17. Denver just picking apart 49ers. I didn't see that happen. Here's what might be the most interesting thing. Julius Thomas doesn't have a touchdown for the first time this year. I don't know who you call in this situation, but it seems like someone should be in panic mode. DT goes bananas. 8 for 171, 2 touchdowns. Hillman 14 for 74 and 2 touchdowns. I was hating on him last week. I guess I can't really hate right now. It's two games in a row where he's put up the statistics. I still think though, if Moneyball comes back, I think Ball is the more talented back and can block better than Hillman. Gore 9 for 20, 5 points in his last 2 games. What's going on there?
Yeah, it's a tough team, the San Francisco team, to kind of react to. I mean, they're here one week, they're not there the next. I
Speaking
mean,
of
they've
making you
won three.
nauseous,
Yeah, I mean, they've won 3 straight, but it's been a quiet 3 straight. They haven't really done anything special. Kaepernick shows up at times, but again, he does dumb things. Like, I mean, in primetime last night, he would throw rockets to his left and then he'd get sacked for no apparent reason on just regular protect. But congratulations to Peyton Manning, of course. Ronnie Hillman, you know. I wasn't high at all on Monte Ball, but if someone were to tell me that Ronnie Hillman was going to do this while Ball was out, I would have fainted. I don't believe in Hillman at all, but any quarterback that gets volume in a Peyton Manning system, you have to pay attention to, despite what their skill level is. You just have to keep an eye on. And Demaryius Thomas, he seems to be making up for his month-long absence at the beginning of the year, so that's really good hustle. I don't know how many. It would probably you would have rather had his points spread out, but getting them is nice.
You'll take it. All right, listen, we got to wrap this up. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice, people. Pick up Joseph Randle. And if someone wants to trade you Monty Ball right now, see what you can do on that. I wouldn't mind that. Okay, he is Jay Longfellow, a.k.a. JayWrong. That's how you find him on Twitter. He's the head football editor at Razzball.com. Jay, thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with T-Hole. Talking waiver wire. Joseph Randle. Razzball Radio, Fantasy Sports Network. See you tomorrow.